Welcome back, MTG Joe here. Today, we're doing another installment of the weekly meta breakdown where we look at the top performing decks on the MTG Arena ladder. Today, we're going to be focusing on standard best of 3 traditional standard. If you're looking for standard best of 1, we're getting to the other formats as well. We just put out historic best of 1 yesterday. Still waiting for some of the data for some of the extended formaters, Explorer, as well as Alchemy to populate, and then we'll release a video for those as well. So what we do each week is we look at the best performing decks on the Arena ladder, as well as kind of the popularity of decks. We get all the data from Untapped.gg, what you see on the screen, companion tool that runs alongside Arena's client. Tracks your win rate, aggregates with other users, gives a whole bunch of cool stats. Today we're also going to be looking at some MTGO league data, as they've been hosting more of the tournaments. The unfortunate thing is, if you're not aware, the Arena Direct Challenge, like the play versus your friends, or what's been used for a lot of the community-based tournaments, has been broken for months now. So we haven't had a pizza box open. We haven't been able to have like a lot of the tournaments that we usually get data from, and just not getting much traction. So if you do see kind of those threads on Twitter or anything like that, retweet it, try to get some push there. There's a lot of great events that just haven't been able to take place. LSV and a bunch of limited creators couldn't perform their like tournament series that they had as well yesterday. So hopefully we get some traction there. But looking at the week, so we're going to look popularity of the day first, and then we'll look at the decks themselves. Popularity doesn't necessarily correlate to win rate. However, we're seeing a lot of like the same. What we see from the release of the new set is, surprise, surprise, Esper Good Cards is continuing to be the most popular deck. 28.5%, followed by the ramp deck at 14.3, Golgari at 8. We do have a popularity of Gruul Dinosaurs coming in at 7.5, 7.7. Then we have Mono Red Soldiers, the 5-color domain, which is usually the Alara combo. Could also just be the regular, depending on how it gets classified. And then the Gruul Aggro, which is kind of the Sly Red style, where you're doing like a bunch of pump spells and stuff like that. If we're looking at like the increase, it's kind of wild. So we see Esper hanging around 13, even into like last season, it was like 15 at the highest, and we just see a really stark increase here. The big thing is a lot of the cool cards in this set are expensive. We look at the dinosaurs, stuff like that. So having access to blue gives you access to the Disdainful Stroke, gives you counters. Esper has the best removal, the best card advantage, the best creatures pretty much, and it's just, I really wish they did rotation at the regular cadence. Like Wedding Announcement's been around too long, Wandering Emperor. There's a lot of these cards that we've been playing over and over again have just been around way too long. The domain deck wouldn't exist if there was rotation because the triomes would have been gone. Just the format's a little stale in my opinion, where we're seeing a lot of these continue. It's very hard to push out Rafine in terms of a power level of a card, or like Wedding Announcement, stuff like that. We actually do see a decline in the domain deck where it started off at about 20, so we're seeing kind of an inverse. The domain deck's kind of falling in terms. Also Golgari we see falling, and then the dinosaurs kind of been around the same. Mono Red kind of hanging around here as well. What we do see is like the win rate for Mono Red, where earlier in the month 61%, and now it's dropping down to like low 50s. This in part usually first week of a new set, people are brewing, so Mono Red punishes a lot of these decks. As the decks kind of stabilize, then you see the Mono Red win rate kind of drop. So if we're looking at the stats, there wasn't a huge amount of data for best of 3. Like, to be honest, even when I'm trying to like filter, I still have it locked for getting the low flag, so not the highest volume of games played. I also cannot select, because usually what I do is I switch the games played to 50 to 100 just to get a wider diversity of decks. Not getting that either, just from the volume of games. So kind of interesting to see that a new set came out and we're not getting huge volumes of games played. For context, if we look at best of 1, it's 260,000 games played relative to 15,000. So best of 1 is always exponentially more popular, but interesting to see there. The highest performing deck is not only the most played, but the highest win rate. It's Esper Midrange, 61.5%. So this is the mid-range version, not the Legends version. So while you still have Rafine, Skitter, this version is not on Thalia's. You have your Wedding Announcements, Wandering Emperor, Urtai's, the Virtue of Loyalty. This deck now is featuring the Subterranean Schooner, 2 mana, 3/4, crew 1. Really nice value on a vehicle here. And when it attacks, target creature that crewed it explores this turn. So reveal the top card of your library. If it's a land, it goes to your hand. If it's a non-land, you get to decide to keep it on top or put it into your graveyard, and then you put a counter on it. So it's another way to kind of build up counters on your stuff. Removal package and counters, make disappear, go for the throats, cut downs. We also have Get Lost, a new flexible removal spell, so white can now hit creatures, enchantments, and planeswalkers, giving your opponent some map tokens. Fairy Mastermind is 2 of, Denic is 2 of, and then Deep Cavern Bat seeing some play. So there's a 2 mana 1/1 flying lifelink, so reasonable stats, like especially if you put counters on it with Rafine. This helps in these like more aggressive mirrors that you can kind of race them because you're gaining life on the swing back. And then when it enters the battlefield, look at the opponent's hand. You can exile non-land card until it leaves. So kind of that brain maggot kind of effect. A creature that'll exile a card from the hand until it leaves the battlefield. We are also seeing the addition of the new blue-white land in this, the Restless Anchorage, which becomes a 2/3 flyer. And when it attacks, you get a map token, which can be used to explore. The sideboard, just a bunch of removal, hand hates, counters is reasonable, nothing new in the sideboard kind of configuration. Basically, do you need to counter big things? Do you need to kill small things? Do you need to kind of tweak your package of spells? So kind of from there. I'll paste all these deck lists, by the way, so don't worry about copy pasting. The next deck is 4-color Domain. So again, second most popular is the second highest win rate on Untap, 58.3%. This is card for card exactly the same as it was in the previous set. I'm not going to go too in depth with it, but basically ramp up, play Atraxa, Herd Migration, Sunfall your opponent to death. It's kind of boring at this point that it's the same kind of play patterns. Sunfall is another card that I think just limits a lot of the fun of the format. We got these cool gods that have like death triggers in the new set that become lions, but everything exiles, so it doesn't matter. So kind of in that effect, but counter spells, removal, more card advantage from the mirror, Baloths for like discard heavy decks or aggressive decks. So I'm not going to go too much in depth. If you want like a primer on this, check out like any of the other best of 3 videos. I do more in depth. If you really want to watch it, check out like Reed Duke's stream. This is the deck he popularized from the Worlds tournament. Moving on, we got Azorius Soldiers at 53%, and this is the flash-oriented version. So we're seeing a couple more copies of Werefox Bodyguard. We're also seeing Malcolm, Alluring Scoundrel on this list. Another flash-oriented threat. So this deck is a Soldiers deck, but it's kind of tempo-oriented. The Malcolm could flash in, lets you attack, kind of loot through your deck, get rid of extra lands or stuff like that, and then potentially get you to free cast some stuff. But the kind of core of this deck is, flashing in thread. Zephyr Sentinel can reset creatures. You can kind of protect your creatures. You use your Knight Errant of Eos for card advantage. You got some counter spells main, and then as you build up your board, you can use Harbin to kind of alpha strike on your opponent. The deck's also featuring a couple copies of Cavern of Souls for encounterable creatures in this deck. So I think you would name Human in this case. Yeah, so because this is a Human Cleric, Human would be the safest bet, while Malcolm's the odd one out. You also have like Elf Fox Knight, so probably Human is the safest out of all things. Your sideboard, it is featuring a couple copies of Get Lost, just another flexible removal spell, but removal, card advantage with Toski's Welcome, Artifact Enchantment Hate, and then some stickier threats for the kind of more controlling matchups. Now, another deck, we don't have the volume of games, but we see Gruul Aggro at 5%, spotting about a 59% win rate. So this is kind of the closest. This is, I think, Islands in Front on MTGO has been playing this a lot, and they've been doing well on the leagues. So it's what's generally referred to as a Sly deck. So some of the versions are on the full 4 questing druids instead of like Alchemist Gambit or Kellen. That might be something. Let me see if I can find a different version. Don't love. Oh, it's not. I would probably trim these and just play the full questing druids, to be honest. But the kind of core of this deck, you have things like Swiss Sphere, Picnic Ruiner, the Scamp, and what you're doing is just throwing on a bunch of pump spells. So Anger, Ancestral Anger, Audacity, Giant Growths, Mirren Bane Splitter. You have Protection, you have Monstrous Rage. So just make a really big creature, Either like the scamp throws itself at your opponent, or you just deal a whole bunch of damage as quick as possible to your opponent. So you're looking like turn 3, 4 to just have them dead. This is generally what's referred to slide cheap creatures with a bunch of pump spells, and just try not to die. Yeah, I would probably just cut these. It also saves you wild card. Oh, I guess you're just transferring, but it saves you a mythic wild card. Play the questing druids instead. The card advantage is more impactful than I think the Kellen, because you're generally like, it does have double strike, but you don't want to be setting up a 3-mana 2/2. You want to be pumping on those turns, I think. All things relative. So we're gonna move on. We had 2 kind of MTGO leagues that took place. So we'll kind of go over at a high level what people are playing, and then I'll link these so you can just kind of pull each of them. So we're actually seeing on MTGO some dinosaur lists. This one went 5-0. If we're looking at the list, you have the ramp package. It's just playing the lore keeper, not the paleontologist. You have hulking raptors, a 3 of that'll ramp you into the bigger creatures. And then you have Pugnacious Hammer Skull, just a really big beater, especially on turn 2. If you could go lore keeper into the Hammer Skull. Company Carnosaur, card that's taking over a lot of the Eternal formats, just with the Cascade combos, or the Discover combos. Bone Horde Dragon, card advantage on the top end. A couple copies of Watley. This lets you search for land, and then it can be flipped, and then you get like dinosaurs ramp and a whole bunch of value, kind of a Saga style. And then some Atalis, Frillback's main, and the Topiary Stomper for your ramp. We're seeing the Triumphant's Chomp as some removal, and then Glimpse the Core for ramp. This one's more of a kind of ramp-based dinosaur deck. You're going to see 8 Forest in regards to helping the Glimpse work. And then you have Restless Ridgeline as the new creature line. Sideboard, just like some removal, Forge for the heavy sweeper decks, Barrage, Frenzy, Treatment kind of in there. We see another version of kind of the blue-white soldier-esque deck. This one's on 3 Malcolms, 3 Werefox, the Wedding Announcements main. Make disappear, very similar kind of effects in this deck here. No Get Lost in this one. Mono red, pretty much stock. We're just seeing more copies of the Witch Stalker Frenzy main. Going with the split of 4 Furnace Punisher, 4 Forge in the sideboard. Interesting to see like the full 3 Feldons. Usually against like white-based decks and like the sweepers, I don't love this. I think this card's a better best of 1 card, but interesting to see that being played in those numbers. We then have so there's a couple of these Boros style decks that are going around. There's like these Convoke versions. So your Luminarch Veterans, Voldaren Epicures. So similar to the Pioneer or Explorer versions, Voldaren Epiture makes a artifact token. Yodian Frontliner is an artifact itself, so you can Gleeful Demolition them to make 3 creatures. You then use those with the Night Era Navios to get more value. Regal Bunnicorn gets really big. Imodane is like the Lord effect with haste. And then you're also getting Sanguine Evangelist, which is kind of another Lord effect in the deck. It enters the battlefield, dies, you create a 1/1 bat token with flying, and then Battle Cry works in the effect that when it attacks, all your other attacking creatures get +1 power. So kind of an interesting way to approach that. Seeing a lot of these aggro decks, because Boros doesn't have a fast land, have to play the Thran Portal. And then similar, just like your Wedding Announcement side, different types of removal for the matchup. We also have then a mono white humans, and we're seeing a lot of the decks also introduce the Kellen. So not really using it for its journey on adventure mode, but just for its creature side. So it's a 2/3 for 2 that when it attacks, basically card advantage, like the top card of your library. If it's a creature with mana value 3 or less, you can put it in your hand, otherwise into your graveyard. So it kind of helps provide that card advantage that mono white was missing in the past. We see the Sanguine Evangelist in this deck as well, the Spellbook Vendors, and then notably no Cavern of Souls for this kind of human-based deck. We do see the Phyrexian Vindicators in the side for the more aggressive-based decks, just kind of stonewall them there, and then just kind of your Werefox Bodyguard, Invasion to try to slow down the bigger decks. Sorry, again. The dog's still getting over her leg injury, and it's the time for her meds, and she always freaks out. We then have kind of a black-white tokens, kind of mid-rangey deck. We see the Lord Skitter. We see the Food Seals Flanker, just kind of a flexible card. Gain you some life, exile a graveyard, flash in. Tithing Blade as kind of an edict effect that can flip into one of those like gain one, lose, your opponent loses one each turn. Wedding Announcements, Toski's Welcome, Virtue of Loyalty, Virtue Persistence, bunch of removal, Sorin, Wandering Emperor, kind of Myrex in there. Why do they have blue mana? So they are just briefly splashing blue for like negate in the side and disdainful stroke. So just to help. So it's like black, white, really light for blue just to have sideboard answers for the bigger mana decks. We see another kind of the Boros decks. We see just like Golgari, nothing changed. We see, again, just more of these kind of Monstrous Rage with Bunnicorn, kind of build your Ember Cleave at home. This one's kind of cool. So it's a Rakdos ramp deck. So your top ends, Shieldred, Itali, Decadent Dragon, Chandra Hope's Beacon, and then Breach the Multiverse. You're using Celestis Ironcrag to help you ramp as well. And then just a bunch of removal. Big Score helps you ramp as well. Burn down the house in here. So just trying to go bigger using the breaches to steal your opponent's big stuff, or just playing out some of the cool like you got Itali's to steal stuff, Decadent Dragons, just going bigger than your opponent in some ways. Shieldred's in the side, Graveyard Trespasser. Interesting to see no Dracosaur in this deck, but if you like Rakdos, kind of like a different type of ramp. We see the Esper deck that we featured as well. And moving on to the next standard challenge, we see again, this one's just like heavily Esper. We see Esper first, Esper second. This one is also, this one's just blue-white, so 4 of Scooter, the Denix, Dusk Legion Loyalist, Malcolm in here. We got some Wardens. Kitesail Larcenist is a card that's been seen some play in like the Eternal formats as well. Kind of like a Brutal Cathar style effect in blue. It just turns something into a treasure until it leaves the battlefield, so some flexibility there as well. And then having Ward provide some protection. So this one's like blue-white kind of tempo dorks that crew the schooner and kind of beat into your opponent that way there. Just a lot of Esper. There is this version of the Boros deck as well. This one's a full 4 Adeline, full 4 Akim Pakal of 1,000 Moons. So just making a lot of tokens going wide. You have Inti to kind of loot through your deck. So this is really leveraging like a human synergy. So you have Cavern of Souls, Plaza Heroes with the legendaries, Thalia's attacks, Copper Cove Vanguard for the Lord effects, and then Warden lets you tap creatures to eventually give it some evasive abilities. Full 4 Get Lost in the main, and then you have like Wedding Announcements, Emperors, kind of the same package that we see in all these Boros decks, but another kind of take on the Boros aggressive decks. This deck here looks like just the Gruul dinosaurs, but a more aggressive version. So we see full 4 Rampaging Raptors. This one came in 6. Voldaren Thrill Seeker to Fling, Belligerent Yearling, Scytheclaw Raptor, Pugnacious Hammer Skull. So just a more aggressive version with Polani's Hatcher at the top end. Bushwhack as well as Triumphant Chomp as removal. And then the Hunt Master's Redemption can be used to help kind of tutor up the Voldaren Thrill Seeker to give you kind of the fling combo kill. Again, these mana base, like these sideboards are largely going to be the same at this point. A lot of the decks are kind of tuned in that way to have either just extra removal, discard, or counters if they can play counters. Another one of the kind of Boros aggro decks, basically mono white with Imidane's Recruiter in this version here, just providing some utility, some haste. And then just like the blue-white version that we see of the deck, and then we kind of just go down. We have like a hard control deck in terms of Esper. You can take a look at that. The last deck I wanted to feature, just from another creator, Card of Keys. They are 36 and 4 with this, and want to showcase this more for an interaction if you weren't aware. Osier Pakpatik has Rebound. So if you cast an adventure spell, so say you cast Virtue of Loyalty, when it comes back with the Rebound, you can actually just cast the enchantment version instead of the adventure side for free. So you get kind of 2 mana for a 2/2, and then on your upkeep you get a 5 mana enchantment there. But this one's just kind of this tempo-oriented shell based around like Schooner. You have counters. Larcenist in here, Wedding Announcement, Sanguine Evangelist, Sunfalls, which is kind of interesting. And so it's kind of tempo-oriented deck. Counters, invasions on the side, just different types of removal. So you could kind of shift between a blue-white control deck, a more aggressive deck, a mid-range deck. A lot of flexibility with this shell here. So I'll link this one as well if you're interested in giving it a shot. So that's it for the week. Let me know what you've been playing. I know like Ashlizzle was playing a Simic Cookies deck, like Artifact deck, had some good success with it. Go out, check it out on her channel, but haven't seen too many stats outside of that one. And then hopefully we just get a couple more challenges. I would really love if they brought back the metagame challenge. Just give us something to, try to grind, get some value out of, but we're just not getting that same. But in any case, thanks for watching. Hope you have a great one. Stay safe.